So you've gotten a software engineering job. You just started out. This is your first job. And now you're kind of questioning what you should do now because before you've been studying for the interviews, you just had school, you've been in class, you've studied programming, um, operating systems, data structures, maybe computer science, whatever you studied. You've always been in a studying mindset up until this point that you've gotten a job. So now you're asking yourself the question, what's next? Now that I've started as a junior developer, what's the next course of action? So I want to talk about that because I think that that is I just don't think that that is discussed a lot, to be honest with you. I don't think that the practical course of action is talked about once you get a junior developer spot. I didn't see that when I started 6 years ago, and I just didn't see that talked about. And different places have different uh, requirements for the level of developer that you are. If you're a software developer one, two, three, senior, lead, whatever hierarchy you have at your company, if you're working in a company. Um, the guidance that I've seen from junior developer to dev 2, 3, I just don't think has been that practical. It always falls victim to, being too abstract. It's too vague. I've seen a lot of it be like, I've looked up different guidelines from companies that have posted their qualifications for like Dev 2, Dev 3 on those things. A lot of them are just, general problem solving ability. You start to, um, show a better ability to think through problems, produce a level of code that doesn't require as much oversight. You're able to contribute more to pull requests, and you're able to do all these things. But when you're just starting out, that's very hard to gauge. How do you know if you're contributing at a high enough level to be developer two? How do you know if you're contributing to pull requests at a high enough level to be developer two? These things are not really trackable. And so it's hard to sometimes hold yourself up to a kind of a vague or ambiguous standard. And because you don't know if you're meeting it or not, because you don't have like a clear set of guidelines. So if I can talk about this a little bit, if I was to start out again as a junior developer, one thing that I would immediately do is set up a meeting with every developer on my team at the minimum, and maybe teams that I may interact with. Set up a meeting with each developer and just talk to them about what are you working on? Can I have an opportunity to pair with you on something that you're working on? Can you talk about any challenges that you're facing? And can you talk about any technologies that you want to incorporate into the system or that your team has plans to incorporate? So basically, are you going to be building anything new or adding anything new to the system? The reason I would meet with people on an individual basis as opposed to a whole team is because I think that sometimes if you meet with a whole team, one or two people may talk the whole time, and some other people may not be just may not say anything. That's just what happens in meetings. So if you meet with developers one on one, and you meet with all of them, you got to meet with all of them. I think that you'll get a really good feel of the state of the team, but also it'll just expand your ability to pair with people on problems. And I think that that's going to be an invaluable experience. And I would record every time you do that and keep track of what you have worked on. Because before you know it, if you've seen someone solve a problem one way, you're probably going to remember that the next time that you have to go and solve that problem yourself. And if you get stuck, you can then ask that person, hey, I remember we were working on this. Like, what was the thing you did here? And just having that open dialogue because you've already met with them in the past is huge. So I would try to do that as early on as possible, maybe even the first week that you start, just to show that you're engaged, to show that you want to meet and get to know the people you work with. that says a lot, and it says that you want to be, a contributing member to the team. So that's what I would do. That's what I would do week one. The second thing I would do is I would create your own architecture diagram of the system. Even if the team has made, their documentation about it, I would make your own. I would make your own because it shows, it will challenge you to see if you are able to diagram the system, and you'll see how much of it you actually know, and see how much of the system you can think about and talk about. And so if you draw your own diagram, you can begin to use that as a resource for yourself, but you can also begin to use that as a resource for other people. And the more you circulate your documentation and things that you're working on and things that you're contributing, the more you're going to get recognition for just contributing information and knowledge across the team. And that's something that's going to be highlighted, especially if you're just a junior developer, because architecture diagrams and stuff are not typically a junior developer responsibility. But if you can start working on that now and early as possible, I think that that's going to look super good. But it's also going to show that you're interested in the system and you're trying to understand it. Because I think it's easy to like go and look at the existing diagrams if they have them. But it's another thing to try to make your own and see if see if they match up. So that's another thing I would do. Another thing I would do, and I think that this is a little bit harder one, but I think that it's important that you keep track of all the pull request feedback that you get. So if you make a pull request and you get feedback on like, hey, can you change, this, and that, keep track of all the things that have been, addressed in your code, and just keep a log of all like the issues. Like maybe you didn't, I don't know, maybe you didn't like add a null check there, or maybe you didn't dispose of like some resource here, or you set up an endpoint wrong, whatever it is. Just keep a log of those things and keep them in a Google Doc or Microsoft Word or whatever. Just keep them in a list and just keep adding to that. And after about a year, just go through and look at the list. And I think that if you keep a record of all the things that have maybe you've done incorrectly, I think it's going to help you tremendously, because you can take notes on each of the things that have been called out, and you can use that a year and a half out from when you start as kind of a record to show, hey, these are the areas that I have for improvement, because this is what has been called out in my pull requests. So these are very explicit areas that I can improve on, and I've kept a record of them, and you can talk about that with your manager. Just say like, hey, like I've been recording all these things, I've been taking notes, I've been researching all this stuff, and I think it's going to help add to the conversation of how can I improve. I think showing that list, I think is going to be an excellent resource. But it's going to be an excellent resource for you, because it's going to help you keep track of like, am I making the same mistake multiple times? Am I doing something that's bad practice? Am I doing something that I need to maybe put some more time into reading about or researching about? So I think it's going to give you a really clear indication and guideline for you. The fourth thing that I would do is try your best to not just focus on I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I would try your best to not just focus on the easy tasks, right? I think it's important up front to obviously like show that you're capable of programming and contributing to the team, but I would try to get involved however you can on some of the harder tickets and tasks. Now, that may look like, maybe you don't pick it up directly because you're working on something else or something's been assigned to you, but maybe just look at like what your sprint has in it. And if one of the harder tasks interests you, just reach out to whoever is working on that and just say like, just ask like, hey, can we set up a time to look at this? Like, I'm interested in this problem. I want to know like more about how we would implement this and do that. And I think just getting in the habit of routinely reaching out about other people's tickets and just learning about how they're doing it, I think is going to be very, very valuable because it's going to bring you in the conversation, but you're also going to get experience and an insight into what the problem solving method is for specific things. And I think that is going to be huge in terms of like helping you advance. But also, again, it's going to show like initiative on your part to show like, hey, I'm actually interested in what our team is doing beyond just the tasks that I have. So that's something I would try to do. And I would try to do that probably sooner than later. I'll probably try to start that as an earlier practice. Um, so yeah, that's another thing I would do. What am I on, 5? I think the fifth thing I would do is just ask up front what it takes to be promoted. What do I have to do to be promoted? And I think that you have to get in the practice of asking that question routinely because the reality is that you have to be the voice for yourself, right? If you want a promotion, you have to ask, and you have to ask several times just to make sure that you are understanding where you are at, and just ask up front, like when you start, say, hey, I'm interested in, I want to be promoted to developer 2. I want to know what it's going to take to get there, and then just create a plan with whoever your manager is and say, hey, this is what the requirements are, this is what it's going to take to get there, and let's see if we can make a plan to get there by next year and a half, and just lay out a timeline of when you want to get there by. Because I think just opening that conversation earlier is going to be better than waiting at the yearly review and it be a surprise that maybe you're not where you thought you were. So I would start that conversation early. Just say like, hey, what does it look like? I think I wish I had did that, because I feel like I just never got advice around that. I just never really, I always thought that it was kind of like you just found out, at the performance review after a year and a half. Um, and I just, yeah, I wish I had done that. So I would suggest doing that. I would suggest opening that conversation up sooner than later. Um, you'll notice a general theme to a lot of this is conversations and just reaching out to people and just being involved in the team. And I think that that is a huge part of really what this job is, to be honest with you. You'll find that a lot of it is not code. A lot of it is um, meetings and design and planning and just communicating with people, and just creating, honestly, just creating plans. Planning is a huge part of this job, and it's something that sometimes just kind of falls by the wayside. And if you're the person who's always being proactive and planning and setting things up, it's going to look very good, and I think it's going to help you out in terms of getting to the next spot. Um, so those, I mean, those are a lot of the tangible things that I would do early on. And if you still feel like you need something a little bit more like tangible to do, um, I would try to, I would try to start some kind of best practice document for your team. I would try to start, you know, I, I want to, what I wanted to say right there is I wanted to say, like, I would try to make it a goal to set aside serious time to do pull requests and really think through and offer feedback for people, because I think it's going to help you be able to read code better and think about, does the code make sense? So I would really set up a time for yourself to spend half hour reviewing pull requests, and offering feedback, or if there's any errors, just put comments on there, and then reach out to somebody and just talk to them about it. I would do that. Another tangible one is, honestly, just make sure that your code has tests, unit tests around it. Um, I just feel like being proactive, especially early on in your career, about writing unit tests or integration tests is seen as a good thing, and it kind of shows that, like, you are writing complete code and not just code without tests. I feel like sometimes early on, if you're always the person who doesn't write tests, that may not look the best. Um, Another thing that you can do is try to take notes in meetings, um, and post that out in a channel. That can sometimes look good, especially if it's a technical meeting. It just kind of shows like you're paying attention to what's happening. Um, Another thing you can do that will be helpful is, um, if you're reading books or you're watching tutorials or videos, sharing those out, and just creating like a resource guide, like if for anything that you've read and have found useful. That's seen as a good thing too. Um, and then obviously just improving your coding skills in terms of like uh, quality things you're checking for. You can start using, um, like diagnostic tools to measure your performance. You can start using, trying to think. You can start familiarizing yourself with tools like Postman, um, other like load testing tools. There's a number of other tools, but I'm not trying to say that you need to get fancy with your syntax, because I don't think that that helps. Um, but I think that you should start familiarizing yourself with more advanced components of programming. For instance, like you could try to get better using cancellation tokens. You can try to improve your error handling, and you can try to improve your logging. Logging is a big one. Making sure you add appropriate log statements is definitely a good characteristic, and something that's going to be beneficial for you. Um, Another thing you can do is make a list of technical debt, things that you found in the system, and keeping that in a log, and then sharing that out with the team. If you start to identify a lot of technical debt items, that list is going to be very, very, very valuable, moving forward, because technical debt, just gets lost, right? We just forget about it and we don't prioritize it. But if you're always the person that's like bringing it up as something we should do, um, you may end up finding that you can carve out dedicated time in each sprint to doing some kind of technical debt, and so that would look really good too if you initiate that. I think that would be very good. Um, Another thing, and this is going to be my last one probably, but this one might be a bit more of a stretch. But if you can somehow organize uh, group discussions about a topic, that can be like starting like a book club. It can be starting some kind of interest group. It can be starting or just leading a presentation about a topic you're learning about. I would do those and try to set those up maybe like, I don't know, once a quarter. That's pretty irregular, but enough where it's like uh, enough where it's consistent enough where you'll like be like it'll be helpful for people. Um, I think setting that up will help you study for maybe things that you're not like super familiar with, but you know you're going to be presenting on it in 4 months, so you're going to be studying for it. So I think those are going to help you out more than you think, to be honest, because I think it's going to really push you to uh, learn something that you might not have learned before. Um, so hopefully this list was helpful. Again, there's like way more other things that you can do, but hopefully this was a practical, like actual tangible list of things that you could do to hopefully help you advance in your career. So if you have any questions, let me know. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.